Good afternoon, members of the board. I'm Mike Inamine, Executive Director of Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency. Please bear with me while I set up the presentation. Or not. Okay. Thank you for this time to brief the board and the public. Normally, this time of year, we give a briefing on what has transpired on behalf of the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency and activities funded by the Sabufka service area. And then talk a little bit about the challenges coming up through the upcoming year, particularly with regard to construction activities. However, a couple of things have happened recently. Maybe you've heard about Oroville Dam and some of the high water events that have occurred in recent weeks. So by popular demand, we've dispensed with that, or I've dispensed with that. And I'm just going to give you a briefing of recent flood activities and actions that have been taken by Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency on behalf of local levee maintaining agencies. So with that, I'm going to talk very briefly because I'm sure everybody has access to the internet, everybody's watching the news. I'm going to talk a little bit about Oroville Spillway and what it means with respect to Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency and all of the affected levees on the west bank of the Feather River and as they impact Sutter County specifically. So, and I apologize for probably presenting a lot of information that everybody is following, but I just want to talk about some specific issues and how they pertain to levees, particularly on the west bank of the Feather River, where the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency is constructing levee improvements. So, Lake Oroville is the largest project on the State Water Project, essentially the headwaters of the State Water Project. It's the tallest dam in North America, 770 feet high. And the issues that we and all of our community have been facing have to do with the two spillway structures on that comprise the spillway complex. And that's the emergency spillway located up on the left-hand part of the picture. It's got a capacity of about 350,000 CFS. And the service spillway, which was just dewatered for the first time in a long time, immediately to the left of that looking downstream. And it's a gated structure that discharges up to 150,000, 160,000 CFS. So when the incident first occurred on February 7th, there was a lot of concern about the work that was taking place that Sabufka was constructing downstream because the loss of these spillways would essentially limit the ability to take advantage of the detention space in Lake Oroville. So obviously we were taking a look at that with respect to ongoing construction and our ability to operate these levees throughout the remainder of the flood season. This is a picture I just immediately prior to this presentation, I just pulled off the KCR website, and I know this is a terrible place to show a picture like this, but the service spillway, when it started eroding on February 7th, eroded from a location down here, and it's about 1,600 feet from the emergency spillway, the service spillway gates down to the area of erosion. And the reason this is a concern is not because of a catastrophic flood event, because the dam is placed over here and there's a large rock monolith between the service spillway and the dam, but it is simply because once the erosion heads up, if the erosion were to head up any further, these service spillway gates might be closed by a regulatory agency, and then while the water would be released in a somewhat controlled manner, we would not be able to take advantage of the detention storage. And what that would mean for us in sort of a real way is that we might be subject to higher water surface elevations in the levees downstream than we normally would. So yesterday the Oroville Dam was dewatered in an attempt to remove some of this debris, which improves the outflow capacity of other outlet structures that are located at the dam itself. I won't get into those details. And so you're seeing a lot of lowered water surface elevations. The reason this is all important is because this has been, as you know, an uncommonly, compared to the past 5 years of drought anyway, it's been an uncommon high water event. Snowpack is quite large, and what that means for us who live live adjacent to levees is that this is going to be a long runoff season. We're going to see continued high flows, potentially warm rains in March, and we're just going to have to manage flooding issues for the foreseeable future. So the Sutter Butte, as I've reported in prior presentations, the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency's big project extends from Thermalito Afterbay in the north, west bank of the Feather River, about 36 miles south to Star Bend. Most of those levee improvements have been made already. So there's a couple of areas that have gone that are unimproved that need additional work, but for the most part, most of that work has been completed. We have a couple of minor gap work within Yuba City, and we have a Laurel Avenue repair, which is another slurry wall installation down at the lower end of the Feather River. But most of the work has been completed, and it's fortuitous that it's been completed by the time we hit, the flood season and the issues associated with Oroville hit us. Now, I think it's important to note that SBUFCA is in a supporting role. This is not what we do for a living. This is not what we're intended to do. We are a capital improvement project. We do design and construction of levee improvements. That's what we've been doing for several years since the assessment, since the agency was formed in 2007, certainly since the assessment was passed in 2010. Everything that we do, and I'm going to be talking about in the next couple of slides, is with respect to support for our member agencies, notably Levee District 1, and although not a member of this agency, our principal funder for this project, State of California Maintenance Area 3, and of course Sutter County. So the high water incident, which is just due to normal, quote, normal precipitation, precipitation that we're used to seeing every 10 to 20 years, the last big event occurring in 1997, smaller event in 2006, and also the uncertainty associated with Oroville Dam spillway. So as I said, there's no concern for catastrophic failure of Oroville Dam. You've heard that in the news. The concern is potentially losing the operability of that service spillway gate as DWR struggles to operate for the rest of the flood season until the summer season occurs, and they've got time to fix everything. So I'm going to talk about a couple of areas when levees started showing distress in unimproved areas, and that's important. Not areas that we worked on. These are unimproved areas of the region that are still within, and while unimproved, they're still within the service area of SBUFCA that we were asked by, staff was asked by our board of directors to address under the emergency of high water and what became an incipient issue with the Oroville Dam spillway. So the first of these is, and we term these advanced measures. They're both advanced measures ahead of some emergent high water issue, but they're also due to the distress that was exhibited by many of our levees in the southern reaches of the Feather River just due to, quote, normal high water. And so this area that I'm highlighting here is located just near, just south of Wilkie Road down to the confluence or the undercrossing of the 99 Bridge. And so this is roughly Wilkie Road, south of Star Bend, extending a couple of miles down to 99. So we've done some work nearing completion to install some seepage berms located from roughly Wilkie Road south to Cypress, and then about another mile and a half of rock berms between Cypress and Laurel Avenue. We propose to do some additional, quote, interim or remedial work, interim emergency work down to the 99 Bridge, which was exhibiting some distress. And we're trying to get this in because not only for the high water distress we're seeing right now, but again, because of the uncertainty associated with how the Oroville spillway is going to operate, again, for this very long flood season, looks to be at least 2 months, or this very long runoff season. We are funding this right now, not through agency money. We are financing it with agency money. So this work is costing us about $5 million of cash flow right now from Sabufka funds, but the money is going to be reimbursed by the state of California. So as recently as Friday night, you saw a letter from the governor's office indicating that about $50 million had been cut out for projects just like this. And this is one of the first projects that will be reimbursed by that emergency fund. I also want to talk about a couple of seepage areas in Yuba City. These seepage areas are located just in this. These are not emergency seepage areas. This is just where you're going to see water rather landside, levee toe, and this is located. This is the 10th Street Bridge, 5th Street Bridge, and these are areas located north of the 10th Street Bridge. So I wanted to bring this up just to talk about it. A lot of people are asking questions about it. This is Gilsizer Slough right here. This is Van Gelderen Way, and this is right at the end of Tea Garden. These are areas that have historically been areas of seepage. There was a Corps of Engineers slurry wall that was constructed for about 2.9 miles, extending from, I think, Queens Avenue down to Whitaker Hall to the south. And this is an area that we had identified last year as potentially an area needing additional work. If the Corps of Engineers had constructed it as designed, it met all current criteria. We had some questions about how it was constructed, and sure enough, we saw some distress here. So this is an area that we're looking at. We've already taken some remedial measures on behalf or in support of LD1 to address those areas. But I just want to get that out there so that to make the public aware, to make the board aware that we're on it and in support of the local maintaining agency to address those. So that's my very short presentation. Happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions for Mike?
Mike, I'd just like to say I'd like to thank you and your team for pursuing and getting this work done, even though there was some question whether the state at one point might not pay, but we had to get the work done, and you guys took the bull by the horns and did it. And I think we also need to thank our Assemblyman and Senator for pushing through to the governor's office, make sure this money comes through. And I'm sure they're going to pay the bill. But it's work that we absolutely had to do. The seepage was very advanced in, especially towards Sacramento Avenue. It seemed like the further you got down, the worse it was. But to me, it was very evident the work you've been doing in the past. It's been very successful. You got it by Sierra Gold Nursery. There was no seepage, and once you got past the repair work, there was seepage everywhere. So what you're doing is great work. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment through the chair.
Go ahead, Supervisor.
Mike, thanks. I've been down there, and I went to D.C. with you a few weeks ago, and I know we worked tirelessly trying to get money for this organization. And Scott, you actually, even going further, you worked with FEMA trying to rewrite the FEMA rules on replacing buildings and farm buildings. But down in this area here, I know you worked tirelessly getting money, and I know you're trying to get some more from the feds. They backed out the last minute on the last section, but I know you're still working on it. And everybody knows there was over 200 trucks working down there, and it was really a relay of who goes in and who comes out. And the seepage down there was really tremendous. Look at the orchards out there. There's a lot of water was coming in the orchards. So they actually filled in a ditch in there with the spoils from over to would be over the bypass over there. What's that area over there?
Yeah, down at the Sutter Bypass Conference.
Yeah, the spoils when they cleaned it out, and then it come back.
Tisdale Bypass.
Yeah, Tisdale Bypass, but it was not right close to Tisdale. It was more toward the Progress Road. But that was a lot of hauling, and then they were hauling rock out of the Yuba River to come in and cover it with it. So it's quite a job.
Any other comments?
Through the chair.
Sure.
Mike, first I want to thank you for your report today. I think it was good to go off the regular agenda and just really report what's been going on. I know, especially with all the stress that's been going through the community with the recent events, so thank you for that. I also want to really commend you and follow up with what my colleagues mentioned on getting the advanced measures taken care of as you did under a very stressful time period, and pushing that through to make it happen, and getting the right people activated to get those things done, because without that, who knows what would have happened at the end of the day. And then also it's great to know that the work that was already put into place held out, right? So just at the end of the day, it held out through a pretty heavy water event there. So thank you.
I believe there's one point there when Doug LaMoffa got off the plane and met with Mike and the crew out there that actually the president called him to ensure that we're going to get some infrastructure money.
Right on.
Yeah, we're hopefully going to call in that call shortly.
Hopefully. We'll see if it stays.
Yeah, but the point raised particularly about local politicians weighing in and leveraging all the political equity they had was very helpful, as well as local members of the community, the Sabufka board members, including Mr. Munger. Money doesn't just show up on a doorstep. I think we're very fortunate to have such an engaged community, that one of those rare communities that understands floods and the immediacy of the need.
We do have one speaker card on this issue. Pat Miller.
To the chair before you get there. Mike, I'm sorry, I'm still getting questions from people that live in my area, especially in the Live Oak area. They're asking me how much time, if something were to happen in Oroville, or that would have happened, how much time before it hits the city of Live Oak in particular? Hour and a half, 2 hours?
So that's a good question, and I'll tell you that it's important there's a lot of undue concern expressed by some, because folks are taking a look at flood inundation maps that are, you can look them up, they're published, that have more to do with catastrophic failure of the dam. The dam's not in any danger. As horrible as that rock abutment looks like on the right side of the dam looking downstream, this is not, and while the spillways are certainly damaged, the water is not going to come out like what has been portrayed in a lot of these flood inundation maps. So the arrival time of, quote, uncontrolled releases for example, the emergency spillway are roughly about 8 hours at the peak, roughly about 8 hours to Gridley, between 16 to 20 hours at Yuba City, and all points in between. And it would be sort of a gradual increase in discharge. So those are roughly the arrival times that we're looking at for that reach of the river.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Pat Miller with the Sutter County Taxpayers Association. And I wanted to have Mike clarify, we have heard there was a problem at the end of Lynn Way on the levee, and I think you covered that, Mike, when you said between Queens and the 10th Street Bridge, there are areas there. Was there a seepage or boils, or what is the problem in that area? And I gathered that area has not been treated as yet.
Right. Whoops, sorry about that. So the area in question is sort of locally known as Gilsizer Slough, and that's located right at the end of Lynn Way. This is an area that has been a historical area of seepage. There's an ancient slough that extends from Feather River all the way through the Sutter Bypass, and it's just and the detention basin is located right on top of that. So there were issues associated with that. So yes, there was seepage that has appeared as in years past in the detention basin, and so one of the measures that was taken to address that seepage during the recent high water is to increase, and I'm sure the public has seen this, and I know we've gotten some comments on it. One of the measures is to increase the water surface elevation in the detention basin, much like a sandbag ring. It increases water pressure on those seeps so that they're not going to move any material. In addition, there's been some earthwork done on the landside slope of the levee, so you've seen some activity with the construction equipment out there as well. So that is the area in question, and that's the area we've been working. We'll continue to do some additional work there as well.
All right, thank you.
One
Sure, go
follow-up
ahead.
question. Mike, that section levee was repaired, wasn't it, in 97?
1998.
8.
Right. So this reach of levee was repaired to relatively modern standards by the Army Corps of Engineers following 1998. It was an emergency repair. It was a rehabilitation project. It was a pretty robust project. So it's important to note that it's unfortunate to see seepage anywhere, especially where you've done, especially where somebody has put in a slurry wall. But all levees leak. It's unfortunate that we're seeing this much seepage. We wouldn't expect to see that. And so we've made no secret, this is not what we'd like to see from a wall. And ironically, well, not ironically, about 2 months before this high water event, I had sought additional funding for the state to replace portions of this wall that while it was built to modern standards, we didn't have the construction drawings indicating to give us that sort of last 0.1% of certainty, and sure enough, these are the areas where we saw something. So it's a modern slurry wall. Folks are a lot more safer with that slurry wall in place, built by the Corps of Engineers, but it's not something that we, as the final certification of the levee, would be willing to sign off, and that's why we're planning on doing some additional work there.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
No, thanks,
All
Mike.
right, thank you, Mike.
Presentation.
Appreciate it. Great presentation.